We're going to use the table in the following page to answer questions 1 through 5, dealing with the different age groups, children, working class, and then old age, and doing some comparisons and ratios. And this table describes the population of the Northeast region. So you can see these are the numbers that we're going to reference. And I am not going to flip back and forth, but you might want to pause and kind of write things down as we're working through this, or take a picture on your phone so you have another a view. It'll be easier because I'm not going to flip back and forth. So, but these are the numbers. We're dealing with the Northeast region. So our first thing, what is the population for the under 15 age group in the Northeast region? Now, under 15, we have a couple different groups. So we have the under 5, right? We've got the 3252, plus then the 5 to 9, I believe it is, 3371, and then 9 to 14, which is 3411. So if I add all of those together, I come up with 10,034. So this is how many under 15 people I have. What is the population for 15 to 64? So I'm going to add all of those together. Everybody who's in this age group, and there's a lot of them, but I came up with 37,101. And the 65 and over, there's only 4 of those, 2207, 1766, 1333, and 1292, for a total of 6598. So these are my totals for the 3 different age groups: child, working, and old age. So now we can get into our ratios. The ratio of under 15. So remember, under 15 was 1,034 compared to the total population. Well, the total population would be all 3 of these added together. So our total, I calculated to be 53,733. So that would be our total population. So compared to the total, which is 53,733. And we do want this as a decimal rounded to the nearest thousandths. So when I divide those, I come with 0.1867. Remember, thousandths is the 3rd place. So I look one place past, which is 7. 7 rounds up. So my answer is 0.187. So this is the ratio of under 15 to the total. And since we're comparing to the total, the kind of ratio, under 15 is part of the population, total is all of the population. So this is a part to whole ratio. This means there are blank people under 15 for every 1,000 people in the Northeast region. Well, remember, our ratio, our decimal was 0.187. 3 places is thousandths place. So if we were going to make this a fraction, we would put 187 over 1,000. So this kind of leads us right into letter 2C, 187 people under 15 for every 1,000 people total. Now, in letter 2, or excuse me, 2D, it's a little bit different. For every 100,000 people. Okay, well, I'm going to go back up to this ratio for a second. If we want this to be 100,000, well, think about this. This right now has 3 zeros. This one has 5. So we would need to multiply by 100, right, because that would add 2 more zeros. So if I multiply by 100, that would give me 18,700 people under the age of 15 if you had 100,000 people. Okay, so that's kind of the context. For thousands, it's easy because you have the decimal already in that place, and then for 100,000, we're just making an equivalent fraction. Because we're dealing with a lot of zeros, that makes it a little bit easier to work with. Now, we're going to do the same ratio for the 15 to 64-year-olds. Okay, so we found early on in this problem that there are 37,101 in the working class, and there are 53,733 total. When I divide, I get 0.6904. Again, thousandths place. Look one past. 4 rounds down, so my answer is 0.690. And again, this is part to whole because the 15 to 64-year-olds are part of the population, and the 53,733 represents everybody. So that's the whole population, so part to whole. Again, we are dealing with 0.690. That's already in thousandths. So there would be 690 people out of every 1,000 that are between 50 and 64. And because, again, if we're talking about over 1,000, multiply by 100 to get that to be 100,000. So if I multiply this by 100, I would end up with 69,000. So that's how we get the answer for part D. Out of 100,000 people, 69,000 of them will be between the ages of 15 and 64. Let's do this again with the oldies, as I like to call them, 65 and over. So we found early on that we had 6,598 oldies out of the 53,733 total, which leads us to a decimal of 0.1227. Again, here's my thousands place. I look one past, 7 rounds up, so rounded to the nearest thousandth is 0.123. And again, part to whole, because 65 and over is part of the population, and the denominator 53,733 is the whole population. Our decimal was 0.123, so as a fraction, we're at 123 out of 1,000. Again, if we multiply by 100, that would give us 12,300 out of 100,000. So that leads us to this answer down here. Now, if you look at the last three answers for the D, 2D, 3D, 4D, and you added those together, you would get 100,000 because we've broken our total population into three groups. So those three groups put together would give us our total population. Now, 5. What percent of the total population is considered child dependent? Meaning, what percent of the population are children? Because we have part to whole ratios, we can write those as percents, right? Don't forget that. So our child, right, we found that 0.187 of the population was children. Well, to change a decimal to a percent, 2 places. Same as multiplying by 100. Remember, percents out of 100. So if you have 0.187 and you multiply by 100, you get 18.7% of the population is children. For the working class, what percent of the population are in the working class? Well, we had a decimal of 0.690. So let's multiply that by 100, which moves the decimal 2 places, and I end up with 69%. What about what percent of the population is considered old? Well, we had 0.123. Let's multiply that by 100, and I have 12.3%. So you'll notice we had the children, 18.7%. We had the oldies, 69%. And then we had the children working old. Sorry about that. And when you add all of those together, what do you get? 100%. Because it's all of them. So that's how that all fits together.